All right. Welcome. There's a few cameras here in the room. I think we should show them what a good Utah County welcome looks like all across the nation. Are we good? All right. Not bad. All right. That was a pretty decent warm up. So that's good. That's good. All right. My name's Boyd Matheson. I'm your host today. Need some more volume, gang. Thank you. Thank you. How about now? We good? All right. All right. Well, welcome. My name's Boyd Matheson. I'm your host for the afternoon. We've got some wonderful people who are going to come in and share some very exciting things with you today. But we're going to begin as we know how to do it here in Utah, the right way. And we're going to invite everyone to stand as Nicole Shahan leads us in our national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we watch, were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
That is why America is great. So earlier today we had a nice group like this up in Salt Lake City, and we talked to them a little bit about why we're here and what matters. And a lot of this goes all the way back to when Senator Mike Lee decided to run for the United States Senate in 2010. On his very first campaign flyer, there was a saying that matters. It says, "That which we ignore or forget, our children will never know. And what our children do not know, our grandchildren will never possess." And one of the great challenges in our country today is we're forgetting to remember. And you're going to hear a lot of things today that hopefully will help you remember the principles that make this the most extraordinary nation in the history of the world. The other things you're going to hear today have to do about our march forward in history. Some of you may remember in 2010 when Mike Lee won the election, he gave a speech on that election night, which was titled Boston to Philadelphia. And his wife, Sharon, I remember sitting in their living room, we talked about what he was going to say, and he really wanted to send a message that we're going somewhere. And so we talked about Boston, and we talked about how those original patriots went to Boston Harbor to protest against the kind of government they did not want. A government that taxed them too much and regulated them too much and was way too involved in their lives. Sound familiar? And so they protested in Boston. But had they stopped there, what we call the Boston Tea Party would not even have been a footnote in history. It would have been just one more angry mob screaming at a big oppressive government. But thank heavens those original patriots marched forward. They marched forward from Boston, where they fought against the kind of government they did not want. It took them 14 years to get to Philadelphia, where they put down in the United States Constitution, this is the kind of government we do want. This is the kind of country we are going to be. And that's our journey. It's Boston to Philadelphia. Now, because of the current occupant of the White House, we have had a whole lot of Boston battles for the last 7 years. But it's important for us to remember that, yes, we'll always be ready for the Boston battles. We will stand up, we will speak out, we will even stand alone if necessary. We're ready for Boston. But there's a big but. If we do not have a Philadelphia vision of what we do want, we won't be a footnote in history either. And so it's incumbent on every one of us here today to stand up, to speak out, to be ready. And yes, we'll protest against what we don't want, but we've got a Philadelphia vision. The speakers you're going to hear today understand the power of a Philadelphia vision. And so I hope you're ready for the journey. We're heading to Philadelphia. So let me introduce to you our first speaker today. Some of you may just know her as Carly. Carly, welcome to Utah County. Now, let me say one thing really quick. I think everybody in this room recognized that when Carly Fiorina stepped onto the stage as a candidate, the dialogue was immediately elevated. And Carly knows what it takes to raise a business, to raise a family, to build a community. And while she spent time in the boardrooms of Fortune 500 companies showing what real grit and leadership is all about, her most important work has been in the living room with individuals, with families. And so please give our biggest Utah County welcome to a vital voice in our March to Philadelphia this year, Carly Fiorina.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you, Provo. Thank you. What a great Utah welcome. You know, Tuesdays are kind of important in election cycles, right? You have a really important Tuesday coming up. And I want to tell you about 2 Tuesdays. One was this past Tuesday. I was in Houston at CRUZ headquarters, and my husband, Frank, is back home in Virginia, and we have the television on. He at home and me in Houston. And we're watching Hillary Clinton give a victory speech. And my husband texts me and he says, "I can't stand it anymore, I'm switching to the Big Bang Theory." See, I kind of feel that way when I watch Donald Trump. Except, of course, you can't change the channel with Donald Trump. He's on all the channels. You kind of have to turn the TV off because God forbid our kids hear what he has to say. Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton have so much in common, actually. I mean, it's not just that both of them say that to pick the next Supreme Court justice, they're going to do a deal with Chuck Schumer and Harry Reid and pick a consensus candidate. They both say that. It's not just that they were for partial birth abortion before they decided maybe they weren't. It's not just that they both are for Obamacare. See, actually, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump are 2 sides of the same coin. Hillary Clinton has made her millions selling access and influence from the inside of the political system, and Donald Trump has made his billions buying people like Hillary Clinton off. They are the system, folks. They're not going to change the system. They are the system. Now let me tell you about a Tuesday a couple weeks ago. In Virginia, we had a primary, and I had to go vote. So I walked into the voting booth, and I see the ballot, and I see my own name on the ballot. That's pretty cool, I gotta tell you. And I thought about all my supporters who'd worked so hard, and you know, my hand, I have to tell you the truth, my hand sort of paused over my name. But then I thought, no, there's so much at stake. And I thought about all the reasons I had run. We need a real constitutional conservative in the White House. We need someone who's going to challenge the system. And so I looked up and down that ballot, and I checked the box for Ted Cruz, and that's what you have to do on Tuesday. And let me tell you something, folks. You've seen other presidential candidates come out and endorse Donald Trump. And you've kind of seen them hint at the deals that got done. Let me tell you something. I went into that ballot box and voted for Ted Cruz before I'd ever had the first meeting with him. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you what's at stake. You know in your bones what's at stake, but it's worth talking about it. Let me tell you what's at stake. This is an exceptional nation. You know, it's not fashionable in some circles now to talk about the exceptional nature of this nation, but let me tell you something. I have traveled and lived and worked all over the world for decades. I've done business, I've done charity, I've done policy work, and I can tell you with absolute certainty that it is only in this nation that a young woman can start out the way I did, typing and filing for a 9-person real estate firm in the middle of a deep recession, go on one day to become the chief executive of what we turned into the largest technology company in the world and run for the presidency of the United States. That is only possible in this nation. And you see, that is what's at stake. Because today, record numbers of men are out of work. Record numbers of women are living in poverty. Record numbers of young people don't believe the American dream even exists for them anymore. And you know why all that is going on? Because the game is rigged, the system's fixed, and the American people have figured that out. 80% of the American people now know that our federal government is incompetent and corrupt. 80% of the American people have figured out that we have a professional political class, people who care more about their own power, their own position, and their own privilege than on getting any work done. It ain't working for us anymore, which brings us all the way back to Philadelphia. You know, I was a history and philosophy major in college. That's why I started out as a secretary. And so having studied history and philosophy, I can tell you that people kind of are the same all throughout the ages. Our founders wrote the Constitution because they believed two profound truths. First, they knew that each of us are gifted profoundly by God, that every individual life has potential. And they said that each of us and every life, each of us and every life have inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What they meant by that was that each person should have the right to fulfill their potential, to find and use all their God-given gifts. And they said, and this was profound and unique, radical even at the time, those rights come from God and cannot be taken away by man or government. And so, people know the Constitution as a document that enshrines our rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, our right to bear arms. But the Constitution was written for another very important purpose. And that purpose was to constrain power. Because our founders understood that when too much power is collected and concentrated in the hands of too few, it is always abused. The Constitution is a document to constrain power, and that is why the powers of the federal government are enumerated, and those powers that are not enumerated specifically to the federal government belong to the individuals and to communities and to states. It is why we were intended to be a citizen government. You see, that is what is at stake. We have come so far from the Constitution, and that is why we have so much power, too much economic power, too much political power concentrated in the hands of too few. And Republicans and Democrats alike have presided over that system for far too long. That is the system that Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton will preserve, because it is a system they have benefited from all their lives. So, what do we need? What we need are fearless fighters on Capitol Hill and in the Oval Office. You have sent a fantastic senator to the Capitol in Mike Lee, and you must return him to the U.S. Senate. Mike Lee has been a fearless fighter against the system. Return him to the U.S. Senate so we can continue in that fight, and send Ted Cruz to the Oval Office to be a fearless fighter as well. Now, you know, there are a lot of people who say that your Senator Mike Lee and Ted Cruz, they've made enemies. Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. As someone who has challenged the status quo all my life, I have challenged the status quo all my life. It's how you actually go from secretary to CEO. It is what leadership is. The only way you solve a festering problem, and Lord knows we have a lot of festering problems in Washington, D.C. The only way you solve festering problems is to challenge the system. And guess what? I know from personal experience, when you challenge the system, you do more than ruffle feathers. You do more than break glass. You make enemies. Be proud of the enemies that Mike Lee and Ted Cruz have made. Be proud of their enemies. I know how this economy works. I know how the world works. I know our allies and our adversaries, and I can tell you this, having read every single policy paper Ted Cruz has ever put together, knowing that he is a man of substance, I tell you, his plans will work to get this economy going and growing again. He is right about protecting our freedoms, whether it's our religious liberty or our right to bear arms or the rights of the unborn, and he is right about what it takes to lead in the world again. So ladies and gentlemen, on Tuesday, it's your turn. You have a job to do on Tuesday. You need to send Ted Cruz out of here with a victory. So now let me close, because you have a lot of great speakers in front of you. Let me close with this thought, so you remember. I know you know it in your bones, but I want you to picture what I picture. Every time I get tired, every time I think, oh, I've done enough, then I think about what's really at stake. I want you to think about two of the most powerful symbols of our nation's democracy, because they remind us who we are, and they remind us of what we must be as a nation. Lady Liberty and Lady Justice. Picture Lady Liberty in your minds. She stands tall and strong, which is the way America must always be. She is clear-eyed and resolute. She does not shield her eyes from the realities of the world, but she nevertheless faces outward into the world, which is the way we must always face, and she holds her torch high, because she knows she is a beacon of hope in a troubled and a dangerous world. And Lady Justice holds a sword by her side, because she is a fighter, as Mike Lee and Ted Cruz are, as all of you are. She is a fighter for the values and the principles that have made this nation great. She holds a scale in her other hand. And with that scale, she says to us, all of us are equal in the eyes of God. And so all of us must be equal in the eyes of the law and government, powerful and powerless alike. And she wears a blindfold. She wears a blindfold, and with that blindfold, I think she is saying to us that it must be true, it can be true, that in this nation, in this century, it does not matter what you look like. It does not matter who you are. It does not matter how you start. It does not matter your circumstances. Here in this nation, every American's life must be filled with the possibilities that come from their God-given gifts. And we must be one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. God bless you, ladies and gentlemen. God bless you.
What do you think?
Thank you so much.
All right. Our next little step on the journey, remember, we're heading to Philadelphia here. When Benjamin Franklin set up the original postal system, they set up all of these stone markers to help the postal riders, so they would know how many miles it was to the next town or the next city. And there's still thousands of these all over the Northeast. But it's really interesting, on the back of markers, on the back of these stone markers, it had a capital M, and then the word to, T-O, and then a capital P. And it stood for Miles to Philadelphia. So we're going to take another step on our journey towards Philadelphia, and I'm very excited to introduce to you someone who has something very important to say. He is our very own and very extraordinary Lieutenant Governor Spencer Cox.
Wow. This is beautiful. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are experiencing something I never thought we would see in our lifetime. We have presidential candidates here in the state of Utah, and Utah matters. Four of the five major candidates left in the presidential races in both parties were here in the state of Utah in the last 24 hours. Now, I know Hillary was a little scared to come, and I don't blame her, because this is the only state where her husband finished third when he ran for office. Now, Governor Herbert specifically asked me to send his regards to all of you. He is in southern Utah with Congressman Chaffetz right now. He was at the rally this morning. With Ted Cruz standing shoulder to shoulder, endorsing Mike Lee for his run for the Senate. We are so fortunate to have Senator Mike Lee back there as our voice, our conservative voice to the rest of the country. Now, this is important, okay? I have a few things I want to say, and I promise I'll be short because there are people you came in to hear and not me. But I need to say this, okay? Last night, Donald Trump came to our state. And last night, Donald Trump did something and said something that I never thought I would see a candidate for president do and say, especially someone in the Republican Party. He was challenging Mitt Romney, and he questioned Mitt Romney's Mormon faith. Think about that for a second. A person running for office in our party thinks it's okay that if you question his politics, he can question your religion. I have a message for the 3 million people in Utah from Mr. Donald Trump. That's not how we roll in Utah, and that's not how we roll in the United States of America. Not only is Mitt a great Mormon, he's also voting for Ted Cruz. And I'm proud to say that so am I. Now, I know Donald Trump has spent a lot of time in 2 Corinthians. He reads a lot. Some of us here in Utah have another scripture. It's found in 2 Nephi, and it says something about woe be unto the liar. And I'll leave it at that. You can look it up when you get home. Now, here's where I need your help, ladies and gentlemen. Tuesday night, we have the opportunity to do something that's never been done in the state of Utah. We're going to caucus. We've done that for a long time, but we're also going to cast our ballots in the Republican presidential primary, okay? This is very important. This is critical. We need you there, and we need you to bring your family and friends. We need a historic turnout, and there's a reason that we need a historic turnout. Unfortunately, when we started this whole journey together, I think we had about 75 candidates for president in the Republican Party. We've been narrowing that down. Some of you in this room started with Senator Cruz. Now, some of us didn't start with Senator Cruz, but we finally got here, right? Yes. It's time. It's time to unify around a true conservative. It's time to show the rest of the country. Here's the problem, okay? The rest of the country has been screwing this up. And like you, it's been horrible to watch, right? It's like watching a train wreck in slow motion. And there was nothing we could do about it. Until Tuesday night, we finally get our chance to do something about it, and it matters. And here is the important part, okay? And this I can't emphasize this enough. Right now, it's a mathematics problem, okay? We have to get delegates to Ted Cruz, and we have to keep Donald Trump from getting delegates, okay? There's only one way to do that here in the state of Utah, okay? Ted Cruz can't just win. He can't just win. That's not enough. That's what I'm telling you today. If Ted Cruz just wins, that's not enough. He has to win by a landslide. See, if Ted Cruz gets over 50% of the vote, guess what? He gets all of the delegates. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to stop here. On Tuesday night, we're going to send a message to the rest of the country. Think of it this way. On Tuesday night, Utah gets to be the designated driver for the Republican Party and the rest of the country. We are going to send a message. We are going to send a message that we believe in electing a true conservative, someone who can represent the values of our state, someone who can save this country. We are going to send a message to the rest of the country, and that message is very clear. We are going to elect Senator Ted Cruz. God bless the great state of Utah, and God bless these United States of America.
Does everybody know what they're doing Tuesday night? Okay. Our next speaker is someone who understands what Boston battles are about and has been speaking truth to power for a long time. He's become one of those certain trumpets where we can listen to the right principles and the right policies to get our country back on track. Welcome, Beck!
Well, hello, Provo! Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Please. Thank you. Thank you. This is getting embarrassing. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's good to be back in Provo. I don't know how many people know this, but I lived here in 1989 in a little house right on Main Street. I was only here for about 6 months, and the Mormons just couldn't get me out of here fast enough. And I moved to Washington, D.C., and the rest is history. I know. That was culture shock. Why are we here today? All right, that's a pretty good answer. I'll take Ted Cruz. I'll take Mike Lee. The reason why I'm here today, some people will come and we have another candidate, Donald Trump, that is running as a personality. I am not here for a personality. You're not here for the personality. We are here for the Constitution of the United States of America. And it's high time that it's restored. There is a choice that America has to make, and we are at a fundamental crossroads now. And we know it. We know it with everything in us. And I am amazed at our country, both good and bad. I've been amazed at the strength of people. I've been amazed going across the country speaking for Ted Cruz and looking at people in the eye and seeing how engaged they are. I'm also amazed at how many people have lost their principles, to where some of our party principles are just to beat Hillary. Who can beat Hillary? How shallow have our principles become if that's what we stand for? We stand for so much more than that. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and among these rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Our principles are the right to free speech and a free press and free assembly and to petition our government. And the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And that we have a right to be secure in our persons and our papers. It doesn't matter what the spy agency has built right down the road. We have a right to our privacy. That is a constitutional right. Those are just a few of our principles. Now, where did they come from and how did they get so lost? We have lost them because we have taken them for granted for far too long. And it's every generation that has to renew the covenant. We each have to do our part. Each generation has to renew it. They have to choose it for themselves. And too many of us don't take that choosing seriously. We have just said, I want to go do my thing. And we've worried about our rights. Instead of asking what our God-given responsibility is to those rights. Those rights came from God. He entrusted them to us. He entrusted those rights to us, each of us. I remember my best friend, he's the reason I'm a Mormon. That guy. Pat was just a living example through thick and thin for over a decade. And I watched him and I watched his family. I didn't want to be a Mormon. Geez, who wants to sign up for that? Jeez, I don't have any fun. And at least we have chocolate. We got that down. But I didn't want to be a Mormon, but I found it to be true. So Pat said to me at some point, he said to me, now, you find that true? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, now you're kind of trapped. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, now that you know it's true, you have a bigger responsibility. You're more in trouble than if you didn't know the truth. And I said, you should have told me that in the first place. I would have said, shut up, don't tell me, I don't want to know. But the same thing is true with our Constitution. The same thing is true about our rights, because they did not come from man, they came from God, and they were endowed to us. We are their protector. We are the sentinel on guard. And if we lose them in our generation, we will have to answer to the Almighty for it. I have spoken to Baptists, I have spoken to evangelicals, I have spoken to people of all different faiths, and I deliver the same exact message. The people of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, wake up. Now is your time. I said something earlier today. We flew in this morning and we're doing 3 rallies today, and then I'm flying out. I'm going to go see Brian Regan and have some laughs and then fly out. But I have a special message for the people of Utah. And a message that I haven't said to anybody else, because I'm not of their faith and I don't have any right to speak to them in these tones. But I believe the Book of Mormon. I believe it to be true. I believe every word of it. I'm a convert since 2000. So I come to it with a different perspective. Many people here came to it through your family. And many people take it for granted. But let me tell you this. It's either true or it's not. And that book spells out in great detail what things look like before the Lord comes back. And he gave us that book so we can protect freedom here. He also gave us that book so we would know what to do at the time. Now, you either believe that or you don't. You either believe that to be true, it's not just a book. Then let the priesthood lead. Priesthood holders, stand up and take your staff. You are the guardian at the gate. I've read the prophets, the modern prophets. I've read a lot of Benson. Thank the Lord for sending President Benson. But everything he said is scriptural. Everything he said was true. Go back and read President Benson. And priesthood members, take your responsibility seriously, or as Pat told me, oh, you believe this now? Oh, you're in even more trouble if you don't do it. I won't say anything more that's controversial, and that, by the way, that message does not come with my endorsement of who you should back. That has nothing to do with who you should back. You bring that to the Lord. That's his decision with you and the priesthood. Now, let me tell you why I believe it's Ted Cruz. Let me tell you a story. George Washington was an amazing man. He is my favorite man. He is the indispensable man. And that means something. Up until 1920, we used to know who George Washington was, but the progressives erased him. And the reason why they erased him is because they knew if you knew who he was, you would try to emulate him. You would try to be more like him. And then the world would never go bad. So they erased him. He was the first one that the progressives took out. And they did it for a reason, because he was a servant his entire life. He didn't want to, at 13 years old, he wanted to join the Royal Navy. Thank goodness he didn't, he would have been on the wrong side, but he wanted to join the Royal Navy. And his mother was very dramatic, and he brought his steamer trunk up onto the boat, and he set it there, and he was with all the other sailors. And he was standing there, and his mother was down at the gangplank. She's like, "Oh, George, no, please don't leave me." And I could just see the other sailors were like, "Whoa, dude, I can see why you want to go to the ocean." She made a scene, and he picked up his steamer trunk, and he went back down the gangplank and set it next to her, and he said, "Mother, if this is where you require me, this is where I shall remain." He served his mother. He didn't do what he wanted to do. When it came time for the revolution, he didn't want to be the general. He begged them, "Don't make me the general, I don't want to be the general." But he served his nation. When it came time for him to be the president, he begged, no. He wrote his farewell address after the first term. The first term was ending, and they came to him and said, "You got to run again." He's like, "Oh, geez, please, for the love of Pete." But in 1787, something dramatic happened. The Articles of Confederation were starting to fall apart. And he was called into service again. And all he wanted to do his entire life was one thing: farm on Mount Vernon. And he had finally come home after the war. And he was farming, and he was happy. He finally, at 55, was allowed to pursue his happiness. And a rider came on a horse in the middle of the night in the rain and got off his horse and pounded on the door of Mount Vernon. "General!" And he came down the stairs and he opened up the door, and the man said, "General, we need you in Philadelphia. The Articles of Confederation are falling apart. Congress is falling apart. Nobody will talk to each other. Nobody will stay in the same room. Ben Franklin and the others need you. You're the only man that can hold this country together. Everyone respects you. If you just come and stay there for the summer and sit there, we have a chance of survival. If you don't, we won't make it." And George Washington said, after a life of service, something that is so unusual for him. He looked the man in the eye on the porch and said, "Have I not yet done enough for my country?" And he slammed the door. In my mind's eye, I see George Washington walking back to the stairs and putting his hand on the banister and doing what I always do when I know the answer and the Lord is talking to me. You know that feeling. And I believe the Lord said to him, "No, General, your time isn't done. No, sir, you haven't served your country enough." Because I don't know if you know this, Thomas Jefferson didn't write those words. When in the course of human events, that all men are created equal, and among these rights, he was channeling me, the Almighty God. He didn't write it. You think you won the war, General? You think you won that? I won the war. You happen to be there. And General, it says in the Declaration of Independence, "Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness," which means there are more to be enumerated, more that I'm going to send, more that I'm going to require you to protect. And with those rights, these rights are not about you. The responsibilities are about you. These rights are about further generations and my plans as the Almighty God, what I'm going to do. You know, Ben Franklin had the kite. He found some electricity. You know what we're going to do with that? I'm sending men that will electrify houses and lights and street lights. The miracle of electricity and the telephone and the television and the automobile all will happen because men are free here. And someday, General, man, Americans, because of what you have to finish, will place their feet on the surface of the moon. So no, General, your job's not done. And that night, George Washington got onto his horse by himself and rode to Philadelphia. And he sat through that long summer for the Constitutional Convention. And he didn't say very much.
And as usual, Congress was arguing. And at the end, there was one state that was a holdout. This one state said, I can't sell this to my people. I need some pork. I need some gifts for my people because they didn't even want this Constitution, and I can't get it done. And Ben Franklin, who was 88 and had to be carried on a chair with pillows by 4 men to the Constitutional Convention every day because he was in so much pain he was taking opium. And even in his opiated state, the cobblestones were too painful for him to walk on. At 88 years old, he heard that argument and he was sitting in the back. And he said, gentlemen, we cannot do this thing without doing it right. We all know that we have seen not the finger, not the hand, but we have all seen the whole arm of God. We didn't write this. We are not going to soil it now with compromise and deal making. Let us do this one thing right. This one state would not give in. What a surprise, it was New York. And they argued until George Washington shifted in his seat. Just slight movement from him was enough to silence a room. And he stood, and the room fell as silent as this. And he said these words, quote, let us raise a standard to which the wise and the honest can repair. The event, it's in the hand of God. Those are the words that granted the world freedom. Now, what did he mean? Because that's a lot of colonial speak. Here's what he meant. Let us raise a standard. Let us do this one thing pure. You were sent here at this time for a reason. Each one of us was born at this time. We have an assignment. And you and I both know the words in this document are sacred. It comes with a sacred responsibility. And now, gentlemen, it is our time to do this one thing right and do it pure so we can raise it up for the world to see. It will change the world, but beyond that, to which the wise and the honest shall repair. Repair doesn't mean fix. To which the wise and the honest repair. It will be a beacon for the coming times when Americans have lost their way and they don't know where to run. They don't know what the answer is. They don't know how to fix it. But the wise and the honest, they will see the Constitution, they will see that standard, and they will see what the founders did perfectly without deal making. And they will run to the Constitution. That's now. He saw you. I'm convinced of it. These are the times we don't know where to go. People don't know an answer. But the wise and the honest, you will run to those candidates that are not offering you free stuff, are not answering and telling you that they'll take care of every little whim and every little problem. They will not fix your life. They cannot fix your life. They cannot make you happy. They cannot give you all of these things. God Almighty does that. The government protects your rights. Senator Mike Lee and Ted Cruz, when they raise their hand, they will both say the same thing. And it is not, I will make sure the rich pay their fair share. I'll make sure there's gay marriage or not gay marriage. I'll make sure there's a chicken in every pot or 2 cars in every garage. They say these words, I will protect and defend the Constitution of the United States from all enemies, foreign and domestic. That's their job. And by doing that, they corral the government, get the government out of your way, and the people make America great again. Come in. Not you, Rafe. Dale. My son, Rafe. Dale is here. You from Provo? Dale is from Provo. I met him just a few minutes ago. I want to tell you why I have hope. Dale introduced himself to me. And he didn't tell me this, his father did. Dale has been fasting without anybody knowing it every Tuesday for the last 3 weeks for the right outcome in this election. This is the priesthood rising. Prepare for a time of miracles. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is real, and he is fierce. And these are his rights. Prepare for a time of miracles and get out Tuesday and be a part of it. There's no one on the sidelines. Vote Ted Cruz and Mike Lee. God bless you.
One more big hand. Anybody feel a little closer to Philadelphia? Are we getting there? Now, you're going to have to really restrain yourself with your applause as we bring out our next guest. He's not used to big ovations when he walks on the floor of the United States Senate. In fact, his Washington, D.C. staff has kind of the running dialogue. You know, his days start when it's still very dark. They end when it's dark again. And the staff drops him off at the end of the day, and they pull the arrows out of the front of him and the knives out of the back of him. And we say, "Sleep well, sir, we'll do it again tomorrow." Let me introduce to you a man with an extraordinary Philadelphia vision, Utah County's very own, your Senator, Mike Lee. Thank you. Thank you. Hello, Provo. Let me tell you something in all sincerity. This is my favorite town in America. I was raised just a few blocks from here. My wife and I met in high school, right here in Provo. This is America. This is a place that I love. You know, my brother Tom and I used to ride our bikes. Actually, for a while it was just a bike. We had one bike between us. We'd ride our bike down to BYU, you know, to play video games at the Wilkinson Center. And for a while, when we only had one bike between us, Tom would pedal and I'd ride on the front on the handlebars and try to steer. Only problem is Tom couldn't always see where I was steering, and one time we were going through Heritage Halls, taking a shortcut to get to the Wilkinson Center. We went down a hill and ran straight into a tree, bent the handlebars forward. I'm going to try to not do that today, or the speech equivalent of it, while I'm speaking. I want to draw attention to something that I saw when I walked in today. I want everybody with one of these shirts that says 45 on it to stand. Thank you for wearing that shirt. This is a beautiful, beautiful ensemble. I've got to get one of those. Ted hasn't given me one yet. By the way, it's kind of weird having probably your best friend at work running for president. At all hours of the day, I'll get an email.
and it will say, you know, from Ted Cruz, and then underneath it will say urgent, and then it's just a campaign update, and I realize it's not actually from Ted. Back to the shirts, 45. 45 has a lot of significance for us. For us as people who love freedom, who love liberty. 45, it's a number that goes back a couple of centuries. There was a man in England named John Wilkes who found himself at the wrong end of the justice of King George III. George III was not a nice man. George III was a man who believed in big government. His government taxed the people too much, it regulated them too heavily, and it sometimes violated their rights of privacy. Well, John Wilkes got on the wrong side of King George III because he published something called the North Briton, which occasionally criticized King George III. That was a big no-no. Well, in the North Briton number 45, he went too far, and that's when John Wilkes got himself arrested. But John Wilkes fought back against the king. He sued the king's people in court, and he won back his freedom. For years thereafter, the number 45 became synonymous on both sides of the Atlantic, not only with John Wilkes, but with the cause of freedom in general. People in America and people in England would write the number 45 on the sides of bars and taverns and places of public accommodation, just to show that they stood for freedom, just to show that they were liberty-minded, just to show that they understood what we understand today, which is that government exists for the people and not the other way around. But of course, that's not the only reason you have the number 45 on your shirts, is it? The next president of the United States is going to be our 45th president. And that man is going to be Ted Cruz. Every day when I'm in the United States Senate, I walk down this tunnel where they have all the flags of the states. They have all the flags of the 13 original states in order of when they ratified the Constitution. Then they have the flags of the other states in order in which they were admitted into the Union. Utah is near the end. In fact, Utah is number 45. Is this trying to send us a message? Can we, the 45th state of these United States, be the state that tips the balance to open the door for Ted Cruz to become the next president of the United States? Will you join with me in showing up to your precinct caucuses this Tuesday and voting for Ted Cruz? Will you join with me by finding at least 10 other people, every one of you, to bring with you to vote for Ted Cruz on Tuesday? There have been a lot of Super Tuesdays lately, but I predict that there will be no Super Tuesday in this election cycle that will prove to be more sweet, that will prove to be more productive for Senator Ted Cruz in his campaign for the White House. Before I close, I've got to tell you a couple of things about Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz is my friend. He is my best friend of the United States Senate, and a friend of the United States Senate is really a hard thing to find, trust me. There are a lot of times when he's my only friend in the room and we're both getting yelled at, and everybody else is either participating in the yelling or they're staring at their shoes. Shoes become fascinating things in those moments. Ted Cruz has never let me down. Ted Cruz never leaves me standing alone. Ted Cruz always makes clear that he's willing to stand strong, stand firm. And if he and I have to stand alone, so be it, he does it. There are a lot of people out there who are going to tell you that you just have to settle, that you just have to accept what's new, you just have to accept sluggish economic growth, you just have to accept a government that's spying on you and lying to you and targeting you. Are we going to accept that here in Utah? Is that how we live in Provo, Utah? Is that how we're going to allow our children to live? Don't settle. No, don't settle. Don't settle for a government that taxes too much and regulates too heavily. Expect a government that will watch out for your interests and protect your constitutional rights. And when you start to hear from presidential candidates, don't settle for slogans that can fit on the back of a bumper sticker. Expect substance. Don't settle for platitudes from your candidates. Expect a plan. Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready to welcome the next President of the United States to the stage?
Please welcome the next President of the United States, number 45, Ted Cruz! God bless the great state of Utah. What an incredible blessing to be with so many patriots who love our nation. Let me say to Lieutenant Governor Spencer Cox, thank you for standing with us. Thank you for standing together. Thank you for Republicans uniting. So isn't Carly amazing? Holy cow! What a passionate leader. Let me tell you something. Carly Fiorina scares the living daylights out of Hillary Clinton. I can just picture Hillary thinking about it and tossing and turning all night long in her jail cell. And how about Glenn Beck? Glenn is one of a kind. Glenn is an educator. He's a teacher. I love when Glenn pulls out his whiteboard. When he starts walking through the perils of progressivism. You know, Reagan used to say the scariest words in the English language are, "I'm from the government, I'm here to help you." I'll give you a very basic definition of progressive. A progressive is anyone who doesn't understand why those words are so terrifying. And Glenn does such a wonderful job of laying out the founding principles of our country, the principles that the framers relied upon on their knees, crafting the Declaration of Independence, crafting the Constitution to create this nation, the freest and greatest nation in the history of the world. And let me say to the men and women of Utah, to the men and women all across this state, thank you for sending Mike Lee to represent you in the United States Senate. Mike Lee loves the Constitution. Mike's entire life has been devoted to defending the Constitution and Bill of Rights, and Mike is principled and fearless and relentless. There's a reason that Mike and I both need food tasters in the members' dining room. Because Washington doesn't like it when you stand up to the bipartisan corruption. But I'll tell you something Mike Lee never forgets, which is that he doesn't work for the lobbyists in Washington. He doesn't work for the party bosses. He works for the men and women of the great state of Utah. I am so honored to be standing with these extraordinary patriots. I'm so honored to be standing with each and every one of you. And I love you too. You know, I'm reminded of a story of a man who's driving down a country road. And he passes a little boy on the side of the road with a box of kittens. And there's a sign that says, "Free kittens. They're Democrats." And he thinks, well, that's kind of strange, but he doesn't think much of it. He just keeps on driving. A few days later, he's coming along that same country road. That same little boy is there. Same box of kittens, but this time the sign says, "Free kittens. They're Republicans." The guy thinks, all right, that's the strangest thing I've ever seen. He pulls off on the side of the road. He walks up, he said, "Son, I don't understand. I drove by here a couple of days ago. You had these kittens. You said they're Democrats. Now you say they're Republicans. What gives?" The kid looks at him and goes, "Well, mister, now their eyes are open." And let me tell you, people's eyes are opening up all over this country. You know, we're here today because our country's in crisis. Because we're bankrupting our kids and grandkids. Because our constitutional rights are under assault each and every day. And because America has receded from leadership in the world. And yet I'm here with a word of hope and encouragement and exhortation. All across America, there is a spirit of awakening that is sweeping this land. This next election will focus on three critical issues: jobs, freedom, and security. Let's start with jobs. I want to take a minute to talk to all the single moms out there who are working 2 and 3 part-time jobs, who've had your hours forcibly reduced to 28, 29 hours a week because Obamacare kicks in at 30 hours a week. I want to talk to all the truck drivers, all the mechanics and electricians and plumbers, all the union members, all the working men and women who've got calluses on your hands, who've seen wages stagnating year after year after year. The cost of living keeps going up, but somehow your paycheck doesn't seem to keep pace. I want to talk to all the young people. Coming out of school with student loans up to your eyeballs. Scared, am I going to get a job? What does the future hold? Will I be able to provide for my family? And you know, the media tries to tell us this is as good as it gets. That is an utter and complete lie. You know, it's easy to talk about making America great again. You can even print that on a baseball cap. And you're right, an awful lot of them are made in China. But the real question is, do you understand the principles and values that made America great in the first place? The heart of our economy is not Washington, D.C. The heart of our economy is small businesses all across the United States of America. If you want to kill the economy, just do what we've done the last 7 years, hammer the living daylights out of small businesses. But on the other hand, if you want to see the economy just take off, just roar, that'll help. You take the boot of the federal government off the back of the necks of small businesses. If I am elected president, we will repeal every word of Obamacare. We'll pass common sense health care reform that makes health insurance personal and portable and affordable and keeps government from getting in between us and our doctors. And we will pass a simple flat tax. Where every American can fill out our taxes on a postcard. And when we do that, we should abolish the IRS. We're going to rein in the EPA and the CFPB and the alphabet soup of federal agencies that descend like locusts on small businesses, killing jobs all across this country. And we're going to stop amnesty and secure the borders and end sanctuary cities and end welfare benefits for those here illegally. And let me tell you what's going to happen when we do all of that. We're going to see millions of new high-paying jobs. We're going to see wages rising for Americans all over this country. We're going to see young people coming out of school with 2, 3, 4, 5 job opportunities. We'll see morning in America again. The second critical issue in this election is freedom. You know, just a few weeks ago, the passing of Justice Scalia underscored the stakes of this election. It is not one branch, but two branches of government that hang in the balance. We are one liberal justice away from a radical 5-justice majority, the likes of which this country's never seen. We are one justice away from the Supreme Court stripping away the religious liberty of every American. We are one justice away from the Supreme Court effectively erasing the Second Amendment from the Bill of Rights. We are one justice away from the Supreme Court making us subject to the World Court and the United Nations and international law and giving up U.S. sovereignty. Now, you know, a couple of debates ago, Hugh Hewitt asked all of us about religious liberty in the Supreme Court. And Donald Trump turned to me and he said, "Ted, I've known a lot more politicians than you have." Well, in that he is correct. Donald has been supporting liberal Democratic politicians for 40 years. I have no experience doing that. And Donald continued, he said, "Ted, when it comes to the Supreme Court, when it comes to religious liberty, you gotta learn to compromise. You gotta learn to cut deals with the Democrats and go along to get along." Well, let me be very, very clear to the men and women of Utah. I will not compromise away your religious liberty. And I will not compromise away your Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. And you have my solemn commitment that every justice I put on the court will be a principled constitutionalist who will be faithful to the law and ferociously protect the Bill of Rights for every one of us. And I do have to say, Mike Lee looked pretty good in the road. The third critical issue at stake in this election is security. For 7 years, we've seen a president who abandons our friends and allies and who shows weakness and appeasement to our enemies. You know, again, 2 debates ago, Donald Trump told all of us if he were president, he would be neutral between Israel and the Palestinians. Well, let me be very, very clear. As president, I will not be neutral. America will stand unapologetically with the nation of Israel. And you know, anyone who can't tell the difference between our friends and our enemies, anyone who can't tell the difference between the nation of Israel and Islamic terrorists who want to murder us. That raises serious questions about their fitness and judgment to be commander-in-chief. We've seen over the last 7 years our military undermined, the readiness weakened, morale of our troops plummeting. And you know, as a nation, we've seen this before. We've seen another left-wing Democratic president, Jimmy Carter, undermine and weaken the military. And then in January 1981, Ronald Reagan came into office. And what did Reagan do? He cut taxes, he lifted regulations, he lifted the burdens on small businesses. We saw millions of new jobs created. We saw trillions in new federal revenue. And Reagan used that revenue to rebuild our military, to bankrupt the Soviet Union, and to win the Cold War. I intend to do the exact same thing with radical Islamic terrorism. We're going to repeal Obamacare, pass a flat tax, pull back the regulations, and we will see small businesses take off, millions of high-paying jobs. It'll generate trillions in new government revenue, and we will use that revenue to rebuild this military so it remains the mightiest fighting force on the face of the planet. And you know, one of the most shameful things, thank you. One of the most shameful things we've seen over the last 7 years has been this president sending our fighting men and women into combat with rules of engagement so strict that their arms are tied behind their backs, that they cannot fight, they cannot win, they cannot defend themselves. Let me tell you, that is wrong. It is immoral. And in January 2017, it will end. America has always been reluctant to use military force. We are slow to anger. But if and when military force is necessary, we should use overwhelming force, kill the enemy, and then get the heck out! So Election Day is Tuesday. You know, a year ago, we started out with 17 Republican candidates. A fantastic, diverse, young, talented, dynamic field. What a contrast with the Democrats. And what we've seen over the last year, as primaries do, is the field is narrowed and it's narrowed and it's narrowed. And there is right now only one campaign that has any path to beating Donald Trump and winning the Republican nomination. If you're one of the 65 to 70% of Americans nationwide who recognizes that Donald Trump is not the best candidate to go head-to-head with Hillary Clinton, that if Donald Trump is the nominee, Hillary Clinton wins, And if Hillary is the next president, we lose the Supreme Court for a generation. We lose the Bill of Rights. Our kids are buried in debt and their future is put in real jeopardy. If you're one of those 65 to 70% of Republicans, I encourage you, keep coming together and uniting and joining. We are seeing Republicans uniting behind this campaign. If you're someone who maybe started this campaign supporting someone else, all of the very, very good people who started in this race, from Rand Paul to Mike Huckabee, from Jeb Bush to Chris Christie, from Marco Rubio to Carly Fiorina to Ben Carson, every one of them good, honorable, principled, decent people. But at this point, none of them have any path to going on and beating Donald Trump. And so I welcome every one of you. If you started supporting someone else, we welcome you to our team with open arms. And I will tell you, I was so honored yesterday when Governor Mitt Romney told the state of Utah that he will be voting on Tuesday with us. And Mitt encouraged every man and woman in Utah and every voter across the country, if you want to stop Donald Trump, stand and vote with Cruz. And I'll point out as well that Mitt also observed that John Kasich has no path to winning the nomination. And so Mitt observed a vote for John Kasich is a vote for Donald Trump. So I want to encourage every man and woman here. On Tuesday, come out and vote for me 10 times. Now look, we're not Democrats. I'm not suggesting voter fraud. But if everyone here goes and gets 9 other people, if you pick up the phone and you call your sister, your brother, your mom, your son, your next door neighbor, your business partner and say, let's stand together. This election matters. It matters for me and my kids and my grandkids. If every one of you gets 9 other people to come and vote Tuesday, you will have voted 10 times. That's how we win, standing together. This election will be won person to person, friend to friend, neighbor to neighbor, pastor to pastor, Utah to Utah, one at a time. And I want to thank every one of you for your passion for our nation. Utah has a national platform on Tuesday, a national megaphone where the entire nation is looking to the state of Utah. And it took Jimmy Carter to give us Ronald Reagan. And I am convinced the most long-lasting legacy of Barack Obama is going to be a new generation of leaders in the Republican Party who stand and fight for liberty, who stand and fight for the Constitution, and who stand and fight for the Judeo-Christian values that built this great nation. Thank you, and God bless you.
Why are you asking